She raised him from nothing. Not his mother, not his family, just a woman who decided this child was her responsibility and kept that decision every single day for decades. She cooked for him. She protected him. She was there when no one was. He grew up to become the most feared Korean mafia boss alive. The kind of man entire organizations are afraid to look at directly. But she was not living inside his world. She was just an old woman, alone, quiet, in a city that never once looked at her twice. And someone decided she was the easiest way to send him a message. They beat her. They left her with nothing. They left her on the street, begging. But he heard. And the moment he did, the moment the information reached him, what happened next was not a response. He destroyed them all. If you are new here, welcome to Afro-Korean Noir Stories. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications. We drop stories like this every week, and you do not want to miss a single one. And if you are already part of this family, drop a comment below. Tell me, what do you think he does when he finds out? Now let us get into the story. Her name was Rachel. Rachel Adayez Obi, 24 years old, standing in Incheon Airport with a borrowed suitcase, a one-way prayer, and a name written on a napkin. The name on that napkin was Madam Soo-yeon Min. Rachel had come from Lagos, Nigeria, second of 5 children, a mother with a failing shop, a younger brother with university fees due, a father who had just died, and left behind more promises than money. She was the oldest daughter. She did what oldest daughters in struggling families always do. She found a way. The agency told her she was going to work for a wealthy Korean family, private people. They valued discretion above everything else. What the agency did not tell her was the rest of it. The black car that picked her up from the airport did not have a driver who smiled. The car moved through Seoul in complete silence. Rachel pressed her face to the cold window and watched this city that did not sleep the way Lagos slept. It slept like someone pretending. The Min estate sat behind a high wall on a quiet street. No gold gates, no display, just stone and silence, and a house that said one thing clearly without saying anything at all. We have been here a long time. We will be here long after you. Madam Soo-yeon Min met her in the receiving room. She was a woman in her early 30s, with perfect posture and a face that had decided long ago it would not give things away for free. She looked at Rachel the way a person reads a contract before signing. Every word. Nothing skipped. She asked 3 questions. Can you cook? Do you know how to be invisible? If you see something in this house, can you forget it by morning? Rachel said yes to all 3. She got the job. Here is what she did not know yet. The Min family was not simply wealthy. They were the Cheongpa Syndicate, one of the oldest criminal organizations in Seoul. The kind of family that had police commissioners over for dinner and rival organizations that disappeared without explanation. The kind of power that did not announce itself because it did not need to. Rachel learned this, in pieces, slowly, carefully. She learned which rooms she was never to enter. She learned that the men who came on Thursday evenings were never to be looked at directly. She learned that the drivers changed every week and all had the same expression, blank on the front, burning in the back. She learned Korean from the kitchen television, from the market women, from the soft corrections in Madam Soo-yeon's voice when Rachel mispronounced something. And she learned something she had not expected. Beneath all that armor, beneath the perfect posture and the controlled silence, Madam Soo-yeon Min was lonely. The kind of lonely that lives inside powerful households. Quiet, total, never spoken aloud. Min Jae-won, the Cheongpa boss, was rarely home. When he was, the entire house changed temperature. Even the air felt like it was choosing its words carefully. But when he was gone, which was most of the time, something in the madam softened. Not friendship, exactly. Something more honest than that. In Rachel's 3rd year, the madam became pregnant. Everything between them changed. It was Rachel who sat with her through the bad mornings. Rachel who learned which teas helped and which ones didn't. Rachel who braided her hair on the nights the pregnancy made sleep impossible. And on one of those nights, stripped of everything she performed during the day, the madam said something quietly into the dark. I am afraid, Rachel. Not of the birth. I am afraid of what this child is being born into. Rachel sat with those words, She did not try to fix them. She just stayed. Min Tai was born on a Tuesday in November. Small, loud, already furious at the world. And Madame Su-Yun, before any nurse, before any family member, asked for Rachel. She placed that baby in Rachel's arms. She looked at her without any performance at all. "You will remember that you held him first," she said. It was not a request. Rachel looked down at this child, this Korean baby with his mother's forehead and his father's clenched fists. She felt something happen in her chest that she had no word for in any language she knew. She would spend the next 35 years learning what to call it. Now. You need to understand what was building in Seoul before Min Tae turned 6. The Cheongpa Syndicate was not built on chaos. That was for younger organizations, hungry ones, the ones that hadn't learned yet that chaos is expensive. The Cheongpa dealt in order. The reason certain disputes never reached courts. The reason certain government decisions came out the way they did. But from the port cities, something new had been rising. The Jukdo Brotherhood, led by a man named Kwon Dae-sung. He was not interested in order. He was not interested in how things had always worked. He wanted Seoul. All of it. Not a share of it. Not a negotiated piece of it. All of it. For years, the two organizations had circled each other. Small incidents. Nothing open. Min Jae-won believed Kwon Dae-sung understood the cost of open war. He was wrong. Kwon Dae-sung had never planned to fight in the open. He had spent months studying the Cheongpa the way a man studies a wall he wants to bring down, not where it is strongest, but where it is held up by something that can be removed quietly. The peace offer came on a Wednesday. A private dinner, family only. No guards on either side. A first step toward a negotiated peace. Su-Yun Min told her husband not to go. She told him 3 times. She told him the offer was too clean. The timing was wrong. She told him she had a feeling she had never been wrong about. He told her he appreciated her concern. He confirmed the dinner. Su-Yun Min looked at him with the kind of look a woman gives a man who has just made the last mistake he will ever make. And she said nothing more about it. But that evening before he left, she found Rachel in the kitchen. She came in and closed the door. She spoke fast and low. She told Rachel about the servants' passage, the narrow corridor behind the walls of the 2nd floor, the panel in the hall closet near Min Tae's room. She told her the sequence to open it. She told her where the emergency document pouch was hidden behind the baseboard in the kitchen, 3rd panel from the left, money inside, identification, a phone. Then she said the thing she had come to say. "If anything sounds wrong tonight, if anything feels wrong, you take my son. You don't come for me. You don't look for Jae-won. You take Min Tae, and you go." Rachel opened her mouth. "I need you to promise me," the madam said. Rachel looked at this woman who had trusted her with the most important thing in her life. She said the only thing there was to say. "I promise." That was the last real conversation they ever had. Min Tae was supposed to be asleep. He was 6 years old, and he was not asleep, and he was never asleep when adults expected him to be. Instead, it was the nightly ritual Rachel at the edge of his bed, telling him the old Igbo folk tales her grandmother had told her. "Tell me the one about the man who came back," he said, pulling her sleeve. She was in the middle of the story when the first gunshot cracked through the lower floor. One shot, then silence. Not more shots, something worse. The organized silence that comes after violence when the people doing it know exactly what they are doing. Rachel was off the bed before she finished deciding to move. She pulled Min Tae from the mattress. He opened his mouth. She put one finger over her lips and looked at him with an expression that needed no translation. He closed his mouth. She wrapped him against her body and she moved. The hall closet, the panel, the sequence. It opened. The servants' passage was narrow and completely black and cold, and smelled of old plaster. She put her hand flat against the right wall and started counting steps. They were 30 steps in when Min Tae heard it. She felt him stop before she heard it herself. Felt it in the way every muscle in his small body locked at once. It was his mother's voice. Not words, just a sound, short, sharp, and then absent. The kind of sound a 6-year-old shouldn't understand, but does, immediately. In the place that exists before language. She turned. In the total dark of that passage, she crouched down and found his face with both hands. Min-tae. Barely a breath. She told me to take you. Before tonight. She made me promise if anything ever happens, take my son and go. Don't come back. I want to go back. I know. Rachel, I want to go back. I know. She pulled him into her chest and held him. 4 seconds. Just long enough. And someday you will. I promise you that too. But not tonight. She felt him press his face against her neck. She felt the long breath he pulled in a 6-year-old boy, deciding something enormous in the dark. He didn't make a sound. She stood with him wrapped around her body and finished counting steps. They came out through the kitchen delivery door into the November alley. The cold hit them like a wall. Behind the main house, through the walls, she could hear men moving through rooms, organized, fast. She grabbed the document pouch from behind the third baseboard panel. 2 phones, a bank card. Cash. A photograph of Min-tae's parents she had put there herself 3 months ago, for reasons she hadn't examined. She looked down at this 6-year-old boy standing in the alley in his pajamas. He was looking at the house. The rear wing had started to glow from the inside. Come, she said. She took his hand. They walked, not ran. Rachel had learned long ago that running draws eyes. They walked like they belonged to the street beneath their feet. Behind them, the Min estate burned. 23 Brotherhood soldiers had entered that estate that night. Every guard, every kitchen worker, every person inside, gone. An erasure so complete it had been planned for months. But nobody thought to check the servants' passage. Nobody looked for a Nigerian maid and a 6-year-old boy. That invisibility, the specific invisibility that comes from being the person a household treats as furniture, saved Min-tae's life. The irony of that was not lost on Rachel. It never was. She moved them 3 times in the first year. Inchin first, night shifts cleaning hospital wards. She left Min-tae locked in their single room, with a chain latch she positioned low enough for him to reach. She came back before dawn every morning and made breakfast, and helped him with Korean schoolwork she barely understood herself. But Min-tae was not struggling. He was watching, he was listening, he was absorbing. Even at 6, even at 7, even at 8, he had the specific stillness of someone who is building something in their mind that no one can see yet. She registered him in school under a borrowed name, Kim Tae-min on paper, a ghost trail, enough to pass. His teachers thought his mother was Korean-Nigerian. Some were curious. Most, after one interaction with Rachel's completely level gaze, decided their curiosity wasn't worth exploring. She told him the truth in pieces. As he grew, as he could hold more, she told him who his family was, what the Cheongpa Syndicate was, what the Jukdo Brotherhood had done. She told him about his father. She told him about his mother, not just how she died, but how she lived. The way she held her teacup. The way she braided her own hair on Sundays. The way she said his father's name like she was correcting him even when she wasn't. Min-tae listened to all of it without moving, without expression, without tears. She trusted you more than anyone, he said one evening. He was 9. More than the guards, more than the family. She chose you. She knew I would keep my promise, Rachel said. He looked at her. I'm going to get it back, everything they took. I'm going to take all of it back. She looked at this 9-year-old boy who was already thinking in structures, already laying the foundation of something. I know, she said. She didn't tell him not to. A promise was a promise. Finish your food first, she said. He was 13 when Oh Sung-jin knocked on their door in Busan. Rachel opened it with a kitchen knife in her hand. Oh Sung-jin was 60 years old and had spent 7 years in hiding. He was the former personal driver of Min Jae-won, off-duty the night of the massacre. The only one who had walked away. He had been looking for the heir. He took one step back when he saw the knife. He's 13, Rachel said. I know, Oh Sung-jin said. His hat was in his hands. That's exactly why I waited. She studied him for a long moment. She read the specific weight of a man who had been carrying guilt for 7 years. She stepped back and let him in. She sat at the kitchen table the entire time he spoke to Min-tae. She said nothing, but she listened to everything. And when Oh Sung-jin was done, she looked at Min-tae and asked one question. "What do you want to do?" He was 13. He had known the answer since he was 6 years old in a cold alley watching fire eat the only home he had ever known. And so it began. Over the next decade, Min-tae was trained, shaped, tested. Oh, Sung-jin connected him to surviving Chung-pa loyalists who had gone underground after the massacre. Men who had been waiting for something worth coming back for. When they met the son, they saw the father's precision in his eyes and the mother's steel in his jaw. Several of them quietly began to believe again. Min-tae learned everything. How loyalty is built and how it breaks. How money moves and where it hides. How fear works and why respect is more reliable than fear. And why consequence is more reliable than both. He was brilliant. He was patient. But here is what made him more dangerous than either of those things combined. Rachel had spent his entire childhood teaching him through story and correction, and the daily example of her own discipline that a man who burns hot destroys himself as much as his target. What Min-tae had was not rage. It was cold purpose, the kind that doesn't flicker, the kind that is still burning 20 years later at the exact same temperature. At 26, he moved. The Seoul underworld later called it the Quiet Weeks, 14 days during which 6 of Kwon Dae-sung's most senior men simply vanished. 3 of the Brotherhood's money operations were frozen by tax authorities using anonymous tips so complete the investigators described them as already organized for prosecution. A Brotherhood leadership meeting was interrupted when the council arrived to find every exit of the building covered by men no one recognized, standing in silence, not moving, not threatening. Just there. No shots fired, no public incident, no bodies. Just the absolute message that someone was now operating at a level the Brotherhood had never anticipated. On the last evening of the Quiet Weeks, Kwon Dae-sung sat at the head of his own table and looked at the door when it opened. Min-tae walked in alone. He sat across from the man who had murdered his parents. He set one thing on the table, a photograph of the Cheongpa's old seal, his father's mark. The silence lasted long enough for Kwon Dae-sung to understand everything he needed to understand. "You made a mistake 20 years ago," Min-tae said. His voice was completely level. "You forgot to check the servants' passage, Sod. What happened in that room after, no witness ever described." What Seoul understood within 48 hours, Kwon Dae-sung was gone. The Jukdo Brotherhood had collapsed at the structural level, and the Chung-pa syndicate had risen from a grave everyone assumed was permanent under a new boss who was younger, colder, and significantly more terrifying than his father had ever been. Min-tae took his seat at the head of the Chung-pa table. He was 26 years old. He had walked back through the door he had been carried out of 20 years earlier. When Min-tae rose, Rachel stepped back. This was her choice. She had watched him become the man she had worked to shape. She was proud of him with a completeness that had no gaps in it. But she had not spent 35 years in this country to become a display item in someone else's power, not even his. She moved to a small apartment in Seodaemun, a modest neighborhood, market vendors who knew her name, a church choir that made room for her voice on Sunday mornings. She took in laundry. She grew things on the rooftop. She called her sister in Lagos on Saturdays and laughed at things that had nothing to do with Korean dynasties. She and Min-tae drifted the way people drift when one person steps into a current of enormous power and the other person, with wisdom and dignity, stays on the bank. They spoke once at Chuseok. She had called to tell him she had made rice cakes for the first time and they came out lopsided. He laughed. She asked if he was eating properly. He said he had a personal chef. She said that was not what she asked. He promised to eat properly. His number changed not long after. She told herself she would get the new one through Oh Sung-jin when she was ready. She never quite got to it. The silence between them grew from weeks to months to 2 full years. Rachel decided this was fine. She was not a woman who needed a son to call in order to know she had done her job. The evidence of her work was out there, running one of the most powerful organizations in South Korea. She did not know that someone had found her. Not everything the Quiet Weeks destroyed stayed destroyed. Kwon Dae-sung was gone. But Kwon Dae-sung had a nephew, Kwon Hyuk-soo. He was not his uncle. He didn't have his uncle's patience or his uncle's strategy. What he had was a cold, tight fury that had been sitting in him for years, and just enough cunning to make it dangerous. He had been in prison during the quiet weeks, a separate charge. He came out to find his uncle gone, the Brotherhood collapsed, and the world he had expected to inherit reduced to frozen accounts and scattered men. He spent 18 months looking for a way to wound Min-tae. He couldn't touch him directly. Nobody could. The man had rebuilt the Cheongpa into a fortress. But Kwon Hyuk-soo had access to the old Brotherhood intelligence files. His uncle had been meticulous about records. And buried in those files, under 20 years of dust, was a single flag from the original research into Min Jae-won's household. One name, Rachel Adize Obi, Nigerian national, domestic worker. 26 years of service at the time of the massacre. Current whereabouts, unknown. His uncle had written a note at the bottom in his own handwriting. No threat, irrelevant. Do not waste resources. Kwon Hyuk-soo read that note and understood something his uncle had missed. The greatest vulnerability a powerful man has is not his enemies. It is the people he loves who are not inside his protection. He spent 3 months finding her. She wasn't hiding. Why would she? Nobody knew who she was. A 61-year-old Nigerian woman growing tomatoes on her rooftop and singing in a church choir on Sundays. She was completely and perfectly invisible. He found her on a Thursday. He sent 3 men. The market in Co Daemun is loud on Thursday afternoons. Vendors calling out, carts moving, the overlapping noise of ordinary life. Rachel had come back from the market with bags and was cutting through the alley behind her building. The short route, the one she had taken hundreds of times. She heard the footsteps and turned. 3 men. She didn't recognize them. But she recognized the particular quality of men who have entered a space with a purpose that was decided before they arrived. Her hands were full of bags. She had no time. What they did to her was not done in anger. That would have almost been easier to understand. This was done with cold, deliberate instruction. Cause maximum damage. Make it visible. Make it last. But leave her alive. Alive was the message. They broke 2 of her ribs. They fractured her left wrist. They hit her face with the specific attention of people following a brief. And then they took everything. Her bag, her phones, her wallet, her keys, her identification documents, the small folder in her coat with her residence papers, her bank card. Her emergency contacts list the one she had kept updated for 30 years. They stripped her of her entire material existence in 4 minutes. One of them said, before they walked away in Korean so clean, she could not pretend not to understand it. Tell the boss his mother says hello. Then they were gone. Rachel lay in that alley. Not unconscious. She was conscious for most of it, which was its own specific cruelty. She lay in the cold and breathed through the pain and thought through her situation with the same methodical clarity she had applied to every crisis since she was 24 years old with a borrowed suitcase. Her phones were gone. Her documents were gone. She knew no one's number by memory. Everything had been on the phone. She had no ID, no way to prove who she was, no way to contact anyone in Min-tae's world without using his name and pulling him directly toward whatever this was. The churchwomen found her. A young man from the congregation who was studying medicine looked at her injuries with a face that said everything and committed himself to saying nothing to the authorities at her request. Over the days that followed, as the church cared for her, Rachel made a decision. She was not going to contact Min-tae. She thought about it for a long time. She turned it over completely. She looked at it from every angle. And when she was done, the answer was the same. No, these people had done this to reach him. They had used her as a tool to force a reaction. She had spent 35 years keeping this boy from danger. She was not going to start using his name to save herself now. Not when she was the thing they were using as bait. If he finds me, he finds me. I will not pull him toward this because of me. She moved her cot into the church basement. She helped in the community kitchen when her ribs allowed it. She braided the hair of elderly women who found her technique fascinating. She sat outside on the pavement in the mornings and watched the street. When the church donations ran short for her medication, she sat with her hands open. She begged. Not dramatically, not with performance, Just an old woman sitting with her hands open in the morning light, her back completely straight, accepting what people chose to give. This was how Park Sena found her. Park Sena was 28 years old. She wrote a social issues column for an independent digital news platform in Seoul. She had been working on a piece about elderly foreign domestic workers, women who had given decades of service to Korean households and found themselves in old age without documentation, without pension, without anyone to call. A social worker had pointed her to the church in Seodaemun. She had planned to stay 20 minutes. She stayed 3 hours. She later said that Rachel Aday's Obi was the most extraordinary person she had met in her career. Not because of anything dramatic. Because of the specific quality of her stillness, she said. This woman has carried things so long, they have become part of her posture. She asked permission to take a photograph. Rachel looked at the camera for a long moment. Something in her expression moved. Then she said, "Take the picture." She did not explain why, she agreed. But somewhere beneath the decision in the part of her that had always been wiser than her own words, she understood that invisibility had protected her once. But it was protecting her now in a different, worse way. The people who had done this were counting on no one seeing her, she thought. Let someone see me. The article ran on a Wednesday morning. It was titled, Invisible Service, The Women Korea Forgot. There was one photograph, Rachel on her bench outside the community kitchen, back straight, hands in her lap, looking at the street. The afternoon light on her face. By Wednesday afternoon, one of Min Tae's intelligence analysts opened his media monitoring alerts and found it. He read it twice. He looked at the photograph for a long time. He opened his internal system and typed a message to the boss's office. Boss, the Nigerian woman from the file. I think this is her. Article published today. Please review. He sent it at 3:14 inches the afternoon. At 3:17, the response came back. Come to my office. Min Tae read the article standing up at his desk. He read it once. He did not move. The analyst standing on the other side of the desk later said the room got different. The temperature didn't change. But something changed, like before a bad storm. You feel it before it starts. Min Tae set the tablet down. He looked at the photograph. He had not seen Rachel's face in 2 years. He looked at her on that bench, her back completely straight, her hands in her lap, the stillness he had known since he was 6 years old, the stillness that meant she was feeling everything and showing nothing. He looked at what was on her face, the marks that 2 years had softened but not erased. He set the tablet face down. He looked at the analyst. I need everything. Who gave the order? Who carried it out? The full chain from instruction to execution. Names, locations, current whereabouts, financial traces. 12 hours. Yes, sir. The analyst left. Min Tae stood at his desk alone for 2 minutes. The outer office staff would later say he simply stood there, not on his phone, not reviewing anything, just standing. Then he put on his coat and told his driver to take him to Seodaemun. He found her outside the community kitchen, sitting exactly as she was in the photograph, back straight, hands in her lap, watching the street with the full attention of a woman who has spent her whole life reading environments. She heard his car. She didn't look immediately. When she did, she went still for a moment. A long moment. Min Tae crossed the pavement and stood in front of her. She looked up at him. And then in Igbo, the language she only used with him when she was feeling the most, when English and Korean both felt too thin, she said quietly, You're too thin. Something moved in Min Tae's face. He sat down next to her on the bench, not touching, just present. The way she had been present with him in the dark all those years ago. He looked at her wrist, at her face, at what had been done to the person who had carried him out of a burning house and kept him fed, and kept him studying, and told him stories in the dark, and looked him in the eye on the worst night of his life, and said, Someday you will go back, but not tonight. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet, completely level. How long? 2 years. Why didn't you tell me? She looked at him the way she always looked at him when he was asking a question he already knew the answer to. Because I have been keeping you safe since you were 6 years old, Min Tae. And I was not going to stop because someone broke my wrist. He was quiet for a moment. They broke 2 ribs as well, she added. but those healed mostly. 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 He stood. He adjusted his coat. He looked down at her. Come with me now. Proper medical care. A real home. Everything you need. She looked up at him. And the people who did this? That's being handled. Mintay. Yes. Don't do anything that will cost you more than they're worth. He looked at her for a moment. His voice didn't change. His face didn't change. But something behind his eyes did. They hurt you, Rachel. There is no calculation where they are worth more than what I'm going to do. She held his gaze. She nodded once. She stood up, straightened her clothes, and walked with him to the car with her back completely straight and her chin level the way she had walked across every threshold of her life. The 12-hour report was delivered in 9. Kwon Hyuk-soo's name was at the top of the first page. Below it, everything. The Brotherhood archive file that contained Rachel's name. The 3 months spent locating her. The names of the 3 men sent, their movements, the timestamps, the financial transfers connecting Kwon Hyuk-soo to his current base. Everything. Min-tae read every page. He marked nothing. He made no notes. He just read. Then he closed the report and said to the operative by the door, "Bring them to me, all 4. The 3 who went to Seo Daimon first, Kwon Hyuk-soo last." The operative nodded. "Alive," Min-tae added. "I need them to understand what is happening to them." The 3 men who had gone to Seo Daimon were found within 48 hours. They had not been hiding. They had believed correctly that following Kwon Hyuk-soo's instruction would protect them. They had not understood that the instruction itself was the source of their problem. They were removed from their lives with the same quiet efficiency that characterized everything Min-tae's operation had ever done. No public incident, no confrontation. Present one day, gone the next. Kwon Hyuk-soo was brought to Min-tae on the 3rd day. He was placed in a chair in a room with nothing in it except Min-tae, standing, and the photograph from Park Sena's article held in Min-tae's hand. Min-tae held it up. He let Kwon Hyuk-soo look at it. "She is 61 years old," he said. "She came to Korea when she was 24. She learned our language. She learned our food. She braided my mother's hair on the nights my mother couldn't sleep. She carried me on her back through a burning building while your uncle's men were in the rooms below us." He set the photograph on the floor between them. "She raised me for 20 years on night shift wages and borrowed names and market food. She told me stories about men who were clever instead of simply cruel. She made me study. She made me apologize when I was wrong. She made me understand that power without principle is just expensive chaos." Kwon Hyuk-soo said nothing. "You used her to send me a message. A 61-year-old woman who had nothing to do with anything that exists between our families. You found her because she was the only thing you could reach. And you broke her and left her in a street." Min-tae straightened his cuffs. "She is fine now. She has everything she needs. Whatever you tried to take from her, she kept. She always keeps the things that matter." He picked up the photograph. He folded it and put it in his coat pocket. "Your family had one chance at the Cheongpa. Your uncle took it 20 years ago. He was not careful enough with what he left behind." He turned toward the door. "You thought I left something unprotected. You were right. That was my error. I have corrected it now." He walked out. The door closed. What followed in the weeks after would become one of those events in Seoul's underworld that people referenced without detail for years afterward. The complete dismantling of Kwon Hyuk-soo's operation. Every financial line frozen. Every remaining Brotherhood loyalist made to understand, without a single public incident, that this chapter was closed. Permanently. Rachel's new house was in a quiet district of Seoul. She designed the garden herself. This took 2 weeks of discussion with a landscape architect who arrived with his own ideas and left those ideas respectfully at the gate after one conversation with her. She ordered uziza and uda seeds from a specialty market in Itaewon run by a Nigerian couple who had been in Seoul for 30 years, Korean perilla on the north side where it liked shade, tomatoes in the sunniest corner. She accepted 2 guards. Min-tae had made the case over 2 separate conversations, and she decided the logic was sound even if she didn't love the conclusion. She told them their jackets had insufficient pockets for practical fieldwork and showed them, with her own fabric, what proper pockets should look like. They were respectful young men. They ate whatever she cooked when she offered it. She offered it most evenings because she had never in her life cooked for one person and was not about to start. Min-tae came every Sunday. He sat at her table the way he had always sat, straight-backed, present, nothing performed. She corrected his posture the same way she always had. He accepted it the same way he always had. Without comment, she told him things about his mother she had been saving. Not the large things, the small ones. The ones only the people who were in the room know. She used to hum when she was doing accounts, Rachel said one Sunday morning. The kitchen smelled of pepper and perilla, and something on the stove that had been going since before he arrived. She didn't know she was doing it, very quietly, very badly in tune. Your father's men used to look at each other across the room, trying not to react. Min-tae looked at her, and then he laughed, a full laugh, the rare kind, the kind she had only heard a few times in 35 years. She watched him and thought about a woman who had placed a small, furious, newborn child in her arms in a delivery room and looked at her without any performance at all. You will remember that you held him first. She had remembered. She had held him through all of it. Through the dark passage and the cold alley and 20 years of borrowed names and night shifts and market food. Through the training and the rising and the throne reclaimed. Through the silence and the distance and the 2 years on a bench outside a church with her hands open. She had held him through all of it. And now he sat at her table on Sunday mornings. She got up to refill his tea. Sit, he said. I'll get it. She sat. He filled her cup first. Outside, the tomatoes were almost ready. The Uziza was climbing the south wall, and Rachel Adezobi, who had crossed an ocean at 24 years old on a borrowed visa and a name written on a napkin, sat in her kitchen in a house with a garden she had built from nothing and watched the man she had raised pour her tea with both hands, the way she had taught him. The promise had been kept, every part of it. If this story moved you, you know what to do. Hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and turn on your notifications because we are not done yet. The next story is already coming, and it hits even harder than this one. Drop a comment below and tell me which moment got you the most. I read every single one. See you in the next story.